Hey, I'm Lyndall Woodruff, and welcome to the Clarity Changes Everything podcast. People are like, wait, you sell windows and you're doing a podcast? Yes, I am, because clarity changes everything, not just in your house with your windows, but in a chaotic culture, when you find clarity, your whole life changes. So I wanted to bring on some cool people. Let's talk to them. Grab some coffee. Let's do this. What's up, buddy? Welcome to the L Studio.
Thank you.
Yeah. Welcome everybody to Clarity Changes Everything. I know I have an intro. I know there's like a little intro that plays, but very excited. Episode number 3 of Clarity Changes Everything. We got Gabby in the house. Woo-hoo. What's up, Gabby? Woo-hoo. Big Jack Daddy Rabbit over there, and Mr. Justin Cole. What's up, man?
Man, it's crazy. Like, ironically, just before we started recording, we were touching on the life of an entrepreneur type stuff.
Yeah,
And
it's crazy.
Yeah.
The stuff you're dealing with.
Yeah, and you.
Yeah.
Again.
Mutual. And the fact we're both sitting here calmly is a testament. It's a testament. It's a true testament. We've been through some character trying incidences you lately. So thank you again for giving me the platform on your podcast recently to actually, that's the rawest interview I've done to date. It felt good to get some of that stuff out. So thank you for creating an environment that allowed me to do that. So I wanted to do the same thing for you, man. Bring you in and talk about the journey, some things that have obstacles that you've overcome, massive amounts of chaos in finding clarity. So go ahead. How do you want to start? Where do you want to start? I want to hear the highlights, man.
Well, yeah, first of all, you're welcome for, joining. Well, first of all, me joining you and thank you for joining me on my podcast. It's really kind of, again, to circle around to what I touched on a minute ago, like I got here at exactly 1 o'clock, and that's exactly when this started, and that's because every single second of my morning and early afternoon has been just nonstop. You mentioned before we started recording that the last 3 weeks have pretty much been that way for you. And honestly, the last, for the most part, I hate to say it, but 10 years have been that way for me.
Just on the cusp. Cusp of losing it and keeping it together at the same time.
Yeah, man, that's the life of an entrepreneur until you get to what I call the cruising altitude.
Yeah.
And that cruising altitude, is like, there's a lot of like memes and stuff that come to mind when you think about cruising altitude as an entrepreneur, because 9 times out of 10, you think you get to that steady cruising altitude. You find out you just lost an engine.
Yeah. It's going down in flames, baby. It's a lot, dude. It's crazy. It really is. So what, you're in the car business. You've had a long-standing career in vehicles. And I know that industry is, I don't know anything about it. I've never worked in it. And some of the things you've been able to do have been really, really cool. And I want to back up and let's talk a little bit about, you and I have known each other a long time. Played golf together in high school, had some fun times. I experienced some things that were not, that were less than favorable that happened to you by some people at the school. And I think it turned into a legal situation, didn't it?
Oh, yeah. It
was a sad, scary thing.
Yeah. It was. I don't know if you'd like me to kind of share the story or kind of the cliff notes, or
maybe a cliff notes, because I think that particular event, the effect that could have on anybody, could be tragic. Because I'm sure there's just a ton of trauma wrapped around that, and I would love to talk about how you handled that and were able to shift gears to respect yourself enough to build what you have built for yourself. Because, I mean, I never experienced bullying, and you see it all the time, but what happened to you was like next level.
Yeah.
And we don't have to talk about who or anything like that. This is not that kind of thing, but it's a situational thing. I would love to hear, this is kind of the experience and what I did that started to propel me forward. I would love to hear that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So as you alluded to, it was next level. So as you also said, the names aren't important,
Right.
because it's not about that. It's as you said, we want to hear about how it turned it around from that point.
Right. Well, it's a victory story, man, and I think a lot of people could benefit for hearing some details on it.
Yeah, yeah. So, uh, again, Cliff Notes version. Uh, I, as you know, apparently didn't get permission from a group of people that we attended school with when we were in high school to do something that well, I thought I got permission to do something, and it turned out that it was basically a setup for them to eventually jump me, and they nearly killed me. It was when I finally went to the emergency room. I found out that my left orbital lobe, where the eye sits, was in like 27 pieces. Like where the bridge of the nose, the bone, like where that ends and cartilage begins. So this area, like for those of the listeners, I'm describing kind of the middle section of my nose again before the cartilage begins. So from that point in my nose around the bottom of my eye, again was in 27 pieces, and there were cracks running through that general area. So the doctors told us, my family and I, that if I would have been hit or kicked one more time in the left side of my face, I'd probably be a vegetable or dead.
Oh my god.
Yeah, so in a little bit more detail on it, since, people are probably wondering like how in the world that happened. Again, it was a setup. I was pulled out of a vehicle, distracted, sucker punched in the face, and then assaulted by multiple people.
Yeah.
Um, Again, just high school trauma
Yeah.
type stuff.
Yeah.
And then the initial sucker punch didn't drop me, and I think the guy thought he would drop me. And I responded with, "Why'd you hit me? I can't see," because he did pop me pretty good. And then I heard something along the lines of, "What, mother effer? You can't see?" And then take. And then the next thing I hear is, "Get up, get up." And they're, hitting me, kicking me. And I thought that I'd been hit one more time, hit the ground, and they were yelling at me to get up immediately. But apparently I was knocked out. I was unconscious for, they say, about a minute or so. And that's when I sustained most of the damage. And
Because while you were passed out, you were still getting beat.
yeah, so as a result, I didn't go to the hospital for a couple days. I went, that was on a Saturday night, I believe, or a Friday night, Friday or Saturday night. And
I think it was Friday night.
yeah,
I was there.
yeah, yeah. It's interesting because like the way I remember it, the way that our car was basically hijacked and we were forced to drive into a parking lot, we were forced to get out of the vehicle. It was like everything zoomed in on the people who were in our vehicle and obviously me. And so I didn't even know who all was in that parking lot because, in that parking lot where it happened, it's not uncommon, or at least back then, for high school kids to hang out.
Of course.
Yeah.
It was a different time back then. We got to hang out in all kinds of parking lots that no one ever found out about. We had phones, we had beepers. We had beepers, we party wherever we wanted to.
Yeah.
Crazy times. Anyway, proceed.
Yeah. Yeah. So I didn't even know. I didn't even, to this day, I don't remember. I don't even know who all was there, other than those people that were in the Suburban. That a little bit more detail. We were at a stop sign. Someone jumped out of the Suburban into our vehicle. It just so happened to be the guy that I like grew up playing Pee Wee soccer with, and who had supposedly gotten me permission to do what I did previously. Uh, you know, Apparently as a part of this setup. So he jumps in the vehicle, forces us to follow their Suburban, and then everything went down. And then afterwards, they pull up to us when we're pulling out of the parking lot, and they were like, "Follow us, we're going to a party." And they had also roughed up another guy, the driver in the vehicle that I was in that night. So we were like, "Hell, no way we're gonna follow them anywhere." So we go over to my friend's house, who I was spending the night with, actually the weekend with, and his mother freaked out, because I had blood all over my face. And that was on the one hand. On the other hand, since I didn't know what all had happened to me when I was down, and the people who were in the vehicle with me and who went over to this guy's house didn't tell his parents. They just saw me as a kid who had just, been in a fight and had no idea. of the damage that had been done. So the following morning, we wake up. I'll just mention his name, Bryce. Bryce is, he's looking down on us from heaven right now.
Oh, I know. So tragic.
So, rip to our brother Bryce. So we're at Bryce's house. We get up in the morning and Bryce is like, man, do you know what happened to you last night? I'm like, yeah, dude, I got jumped. And I'm pretty disappointed. And he's like, what do you mean? And I was like, I get pulled out of this vehicle. I get sucker punched. And as far as I know, no one really tried to help me. And, speaking of trauma, that another person that was in the vehicle that night actually just jumped out of the back and ran all the way home. So with all that being said, and as I already said, I don't know who was in that parking lot, right? So I don't hold any personal grudges against anybody, even the guys who jumped me. Like it took me years, but I got, through that, past that.
I was an onlooker with a different set of, I just happened to be there, not with that sector, in the back part of the parking lot, because my experiences in high school was more weed and mushroom instead of alcohol. Like, you had the super alcoholics, had a lot to do with that whole thing, and then like I didn't hang out with people in my class really a year younger, because that's all people that were into LSD and all the things that excited me as a young man, which is ridiculous. But yeah, we just happened to be there, man. I didn't even know who it was until I heard the next day. Like, oh my God, you gotta be kidding me.
Yeah, I'm pretty quick.
Yeah.
We had our, yeah. So, and again, it's the guys who did what they did. We're in basically a spirit squad that mutated into a gang. That gang was recognized by the school, and they were widely known as like the dude's not to mess with.
Right.
So again, it, I guess kind of back to the story. I was like, Bryce, like we're like best friends, and like he's like, dude, there's no way I could do anything. Like there's no way, right? Like they probably would have killed me. I'm a lot smaller than you are, So anyway, he was like, tell me what you like recall. So I told him the story that I just told you. And he's like, no, dude. Like you didn't just get hit twice, hit the ground and get told to get up. You got hit twice. You were out and they were just beating the shit out of you, like for a minute or so. And I'm like feeling my face and the swelling's kicking in. There's all this, inflammation and, pain, inflammation, swelling. That's synonymous. But anyways, like it didn't feel quite right, And so with all that being said, I still didn't go to the hospital initially. And to make another long story short, at that point in my high school career, I was living in an apartment with my stepmother, who was commuting back and forth from Dallas to Chicago, because my family moved from Dallas to Chicago the summer before my junior year of high school, spent a semester up there, came back, got jumped. And that was why I was spending the weekend with Bryce that weekend. So on Sunday nights, we would meet my stepmother and I would meet at the grocery store to get our groceries for the week. And that was the first time she found out in person, seeing me looking like I'd nearly been murdered. And she was on one of those old school cell phones that had like the clip-on battery on the back. And she it was like out of a movie. She her eyes almost pop out of her head. She drops the phone. The battery, pops out of the back of the phone. Like, what in the world happened to you, And so anyway, I told her, and of course she called my dad, and she took me straight to the ER.
How long were you in the ER for?
They didn't make me spend the night. But I was there for at least 3 or 4 hours. They were like I said a minute ago, it's miraculous. Like if literally one more punch. And another thing I'll mention, speaking of like clarity and spiritual or God type stuff.
Yeah.
The reason they stopped beating me was someone yelled cops. I mean, like cop just drove by. And if that cop wouldn't have driven by, I probably would have been hit or kicked at least one more time.
Probably so.
So I still to this day, I get chills telling that part of the story, because it's like.
Have you ever talked about this publicly?
On episode 0 of my podcast, my wife asked me a little bit about this story, so.
Well, I think it's a huge defining moment. That's why I wanted to bring it up. Like, everything shifted for you after that.
Right.
You were a standard kid from the suburbs with, privilege, if that's what we want to call it, successful family, great upbringing, just kind of that typical North Dallas suburban life that you know about. And then something like this happens. I can't even imagine what that did to you mentally. Did you go to therapy soon after, or where did that, how did it shift and start to go in the direction of the path that you got on? Because you became an investor, you invested in startups, like, you had a really cool run for a while. I remember we would always keep in touch over the years, and you were doing some pretty cool things. Was it Zaplings? Was that one of the
Yeah.
companies that you invested in? So I wanna know a little bit about that. Like, what did you do to start working on your mindset? Because I can't even imagine what that did to you mentally.
So yeah, that's another, it's honestly, it's a great transition, from what happened to where I ended up, because I'm not gonna lie, man, I'll just put it this way. I was homeless within, about, well, probably 3 months of getting jumped. I was homeless because I, had my reconstructive surgery, and my family was like, "You cannot stay at that high school. You're not safe." And I was like, "I moved to Chicago. It was a disaster, and that's not on my family. I'm not blaming anyone for that. Even though I was a minor, I took responsibility. Even though it was right in the middle of high school, I should have tried harder probably to like it there, or fit in there. So anyways, it didn't work out there. I come back, I get jumped, I have the surgery, and they try to force me to move again, either back to where I just come from, or down to Temple, Texas, which I don't know if you know Temple or not, but it's about as polar opposite from Lake Highlands or Old Dallas as you there for that. So I was like, I'm not doing it.
Totally different world, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. So I refused.
They got a Buc-ee's now, though. Temple's got a Buc-ee's. Driving south to Austin is always a good time. I have cute Buc-ee's to choose from.
Yeah.
So yeah, like, keep going. I want to
Yeah.
know how this.
So I refused, and initially, and it was basically like, okay, well, we're getting rid of this apartment, and those are your options, Chicago or Temple. And I was like, actually, there's another option, and that is that I take my stuff and I go do what I need to do to survive, because I'm not doing a third high school in less than a year. And I guess they called my bluff, and I wasn't bluffing. Yeah, so I was literally homeless. There's a Motel 6 off of 635 in Plano Road. I lived there for a little while, and then there's a Budget Inn and Suites, I think is what it's called, at Forest Lane and 635.
It is basically an apartment complex for felons.
Yeah.
That was one of the places I ended up living right after I got back from LA. Like 14-year-olds in the laundry room trying to sell me heroin. I mean, those places are not ideal. Yeah, for sure. And you were there for how long? And
Man, that's between the Motel 6 and the Budget Inn and Suites, it was probably, I don't know, 6 to 8 weeks, something like that. I was doing just random, changing oil at there's an oil change place over by
she was in a car business that long.
yeah, I mean, I was like, "Oh, heck," I started restoring cars before I could even legally drive, so
Well, you had a sweet one when we were in school. Was it a Shelby or a Cobra?
I had a '68 Mustang Fastback. That was the first one, kinda like the movie car from Bullitt
Right.
with Steve McQueen, and then I had a semi SF 396 Chevelle, so I did a bunch of work to the Mustang, sold it, bought the Chevelle, sold the Chevelle, then there was a '96 Mustang.
Yeah, the 96 Cobra. That's the one.
However, that Cobra was not like, when I moved back from Chicago to Dallas, my baby had to stay in Chicago.
I was through that.
Yeah.
I remember that, yeah.
Yeah, so that was, I guess, part of the negotiations. If I got to leave Chicago, that
Yeah.
I had to leave the Cobra there. And so, yeah, I had no car. I got around on a GoPed, a little gas-powered, like a weed whacker engine on the back of a skateboard, basically. And, yeah, man, I'm not gonna go into like all the details about everything I had to do to get by, but it was changing oil and doing whatever I had to do, and so ended up in an apartment, and was hanging out with the kind of crowd that you might expect someone to hang out with if they were a minor working as a waiter at TGI Fridays. Of course, that was my next job.
Know the industry all too well. Yeah.
And so, for sure, yeah, man, we ended up, it was just the party lifestyle, because that's what young people do, that are lost. And
Remember the movie Cocktail?
yeah,
You remember how he describes the lifestyle of a bartender? You remember the phrase?
I don't know.
He said bartending is like it turns into one long night with a few comatose daylight hours.
There you go. There you go.
Perfectly describes that industry.
Yeah.
I mean, my alcohol got so bad, I got fired from Papacitos, I think, 3 times. When you get fired from a restaurant, but for alcohol, like, you definitely have a problem.
Yeah.
That's the whole life.
Yeah.
So where did it go? How did you shift into business?
So yeah, as I kind of already alluded to a little bit, well, I'll go back just a little bit further to touch on. At 12, I started mowing lawns to buy that first Mustang at 14. So I was an entrepreneur at a very young age. And as I kind of alluded to a minute ago, there were other things I had to do to survive, to get money. In addition to the oil changing that I was doing and bartending, or excuse me, waiting. I was a waiter back then. I was also a bartender at one point. But anyway, so you know the lifestyle very well.
Yes.
And we I had another one of our buddies from high school, I'm not going to mention his name, who was staying with me at the apartment, and we ran into some people at a club, and they gave him some money. It's kind of a loan type situation, and he didn't pay him back. So they came one night when we were out at a different club, and they robbed us. I mean, broke into the apartment, just destroyed everything, took anything that was worth it.
It's the same person that robbed me. You hear about that?
No.
Yeah, my apartment got robbed at Greenville on 635 right after high school
Really?
by someone that I was helping.
Wow.
I don't know where he ended up, but that'd be weird. Anyway, twist of fate. We can talk about that later.
Yeah.
So carry on.
Yeah. So at that point, since I'd lost everything, like I lost my job, like my waiter job. I got fired too. Over something I should not have said to a customer because she got a attitude with me, and so I lost my job. I had it's basically like rock bottom, right? Nearly been murdered, reconstructive surgery, homeless, worked my way up to having a place to stay and a decent job that I could hopefully parlay into a bartending position, and then, who knows, maybe go to a steakhouse if I didn't go to college.
Right.
Um,
Which is a 6-figure career.
yeah.
Yeah, those dudes make bank.
Yeah,
For sure.
yeah. So I submitted and went down to Temple, but I refused to go to the normal high school because I didn't want to do the whole join the crowd, type thing again. And I went to the alternative school with the pregnant girls because I had no desire. Like, they were like, you can graduate early if you do this, so I graduated.
Oh, the chances of finding a girlfriend in a place like that are better.
Yeah, I'll get back.
They're down.
Whatever. They're down and they're looking for a daddy for that baby,
Yeah. I don't care if you are a busboy.
Yeah. And ironically, I was.
That's awesome.
I was at a Mexican place down there. I was a busboy. That was one of my jobs when I got there. So anyway, yeah, it was very interesting going to that school. Graduated from high school a semester early. But again, I was lost. I didn't know it. Went up to the Oklahoma State University with the intent to get my athletic career back on track. Wanted to play at Oklahoma State. Les Miles was the coach back then. But man, I was so out of whack that it just didn't work, and it wasn't gonna work in Stillwater. I don't know if you've been there or not, but it's a very ag type city, small country town, like a college town. And I'm more of a big city guy. So transferred from Oklahoma State to University. Well, I never even enrolled at the University of Texas. The goal was to go to Austin and play at the University of Texas, hopefully. But that's back when Major Applewhite and Chris Sims, Phil Sims' son, Chris ended up in the NFL too. There's no way I was going to be a quarterback at the University of Texas in my college career. So then I end up transferring after getting into some more trouble down there. I transferred to the University of Wisconsin.
Yes. I was just about to ask. I thought there was a Wisconsin in there somewhere.
Yeah. So yeah, still, doing the stupid party crap, like like I said, got in trouble.
It'll get you.
Yeah. Especially again, if you're lost and you don't know it, speaking of, the clarity changes everything. That's the most dangerous type, is if you don't believe that you're lost, but you are. It's kind of like most people who are crazy don't believe that they're crazy.
Right.
So I'm just wandering around in life thinking that I'm actually going to have a shot at getting back on the football field at a D1 level when there's really no way. But I believed that I could, and so anyways.
While being lost in the sauce.
Yeah. And so then I end up at the University of Wisconsin. There, I actually, I buckled down and got back into shape. And my goal was to take my intramural team to the championship and then walk onto the football team and play there. But I screwed up my throwing shoulder in that very first season intramural. And that was pretty much it, because I'd already missed a couple of years of college football. And with an injury like that to a throwing shoulder, it was for me, it was career ending. So anyways, that is when and meanwhile at Oklahoma State and the University of Wisconsin, and even a little bit before the University of Wisconsin, I went to a tech school to just knock out some of my basics for college to get my GPA back up to get into the University of Wisconsin. So I get, into Oklahoma State. I'm lost, but thinking I want to play football. I'm floating around from major to major there. Get to the University of Wisconsin, floating around from major to major. And why? Because when I was a kid, my dad always said, "Don't ever do what I do," and he was an accountant, right? So I lumped all of business into that same bucket. Whereas in business, there's a lot more than just accounting, So when that passion for football, when it was clear that I would never be the next Troy Aikman, when that became clear, or that clarity was reached, I was still wondering. And then I hear University of Wisconsin has one of the best business schools in the country, over and over and over.
Kept hearing that. Just pop up randomly in different places. And that's kind of the spark that kind of triggered the aha. It's like an internal connection.
It was like, oh, that's my next mission. I'm going to get into one of the hardest business schools in the country.
Oh, is that what's got? It's got a reputation of that?
Yeah, at the time, they told us once we were in, or because a lot of universities, you can just declare a business major. There's no getting into undergrad, like a undergrad major. Well, at the University of Wisconsin School of Business, as an undergrad, you have to apply after you get into the university. And when they sat us down and talked to us about the statistics, they told us that it was harder to get into the University of Wisconsin's undergrad School of Business at that time than Harvard. And they did the whole look to your left, look to your right, look in front of you, look behind you. One of you is going to get in. So, one out of five after you've made the cut to get into the university itself, which is hard to get into. So I was like, oh shit, I might not even get it. This is a real deal challenge, And sure enough, man, I thought I had learned how to study. And I had dyslexia. That's why I was never a rock star when we were in school. I didn't know that I could hang with the kids in the honors classes. And anyway, I ended up I had to drop one of my first business classes that was a prerequisite to get into the School of Business, because my grade on the first exam was so low that if I finished the class, I'd probably end up with a C, and there's no way I would get in. So another moment of clarity, I don't know how to study, and there's probably something wrong with my head that is going to prevent me from ever getting into the School of Business. So I had to go through a whole process.
I don't know what kind of trauma you may have suffered.
Oh yeah, I had
there from that.
I had prefrontal brain damage which caused a lot of things, rebound headaches, issues with sleeping, cravings for alcohol and other things. But as far as therapy goes, man, I never really have, like, of course, when there was trauma in my childhood, they would take my sister and I to talk to a counselor. And went through that rigmarole stuff, and we got out. And then when all that stuff was happening in high school, they did, make me go to talk to a therapist some, but
Have you done any as an adult? Not really process through that stuff and see if some of those things may still be lingering and hanging on that, yeah, because knowing you to kind of,
so what I did is went on a mission when, um, I guess, to kind of come full circle to where I was in the story. So I end up taking these tests at the University of Wisconsin that analyze, like, what's going on in your brain. Like, you had dyslexia as a child and you worked your way out of it. I was in special ed in the first and half of second grade
oh,
because I could add mixed fractions in my head without being taught what they were, but I wrote my name backwards. So it was like this super, yeah, before I got into elementary school, they literally thought I was a genius because they were like hanging some curtains and they were like, okay, this measurement is 15 and a quarter and this measurement is 13 and a half. And I was like, it's 28 3/4.
little Rain Man mixed with Goodwill Hunting or something.
Yeah, it was crazy. So they were like,
That'd be a cool character. Wish Rain Man and Will Hunting.
yeah,
That'd
yeah.
be great.
Yeah, so I went from, like, being this, they expected me to be the next, Einstein or something to, like, I can't even write my name, and I hated it so much. I hated school so much. I was so embarrassed that I couldn't read and write like the other kids that I would literally run away from school. Like, they would
Oh, wow.
take me to school, and I'd run all the way home? And so anyway, uh, it all came full circle. I had to take this super in-depth IQ test and they ended up telling me that I'm, like, that the raw computing power is still there, and because I have dyslexia, I needed accommodations. You know, they basically transcribed every one of my assignments for reading in college into something I could listen to, and I can listen to things at 300% of the normal speed, which is pretty common these days. You can speed up YouTube videos and podcasts and stuff like
Right.
that. But this was like in 2005, right? So they had to, like, kids that were volunteers in this program at the school who would have to, like, figure out ways to convert everything to an audio file. Once that happened, dude, it was pretty much lights out. Like, I could retain the information way better. I could hang with the kids in this little business. Sure enough, I
Cool.
yeah, I mean, it was life-changing, and I wrote a business plan for a classic and exotic car dealership, kind of just because that was a dream. I've always, as we were
Well, yeah, you love to restore cars, so that's kind of the first venture you really started. I'm going to take my hobby that I love doing and form a business around it. And you had some awesome cars. You've had like some very classic, very rare, very high dollar freaking cars. Like you've told me some stories about people that you had met, I think probably up in the Midwest and how the whole thing happened. What was the car? There was one that was a massive boat, and I think there was only like two of them ever made, or what was that car?
the Tucker convertible,
The Tucker convertible. What year was it?
48,
A 48 Tucker convertible. And how many were made?
one,
One. That was the only one?
the only one.
My goodness. Yeah, I remember when you had that car is right around the time it may have been 2013, 2012. Is that right?
That car we got in December of '08.
Of '08. Okay. How long did you have it for?
We had it through the middle of 2010
Okay.
because we had to put over 5,000 hours into it. Was an unfinished factory prototype, 0 miles
Wow.
when we got it.
What'd you sell that thing for?
So that car, to this day, I basically had to sign a confidentiality agreement, but I can say that the value of the asset, I think the guy that did this trade with me would be okay with it, with me saying this, and this is the first time I've said it publicly.
Oh, wow.
The value of the asset that I traded for that car is now at least $5 million.
Oh my gosh, dude. How many wow, how many, cars did you have at that point in time? Okay, so hold on, before you even talk about that. Um, you had this idea, like, "This is what I'm gonna do." Did you start networking in the car like, what was kind of the first step that you took in order to start making that a reality? Because I think you're yeah, the reason I wanna touch on this, so many people out there probably have these hobbies or passions or dreams or all these things, but have no idea really the first step to take. What was your first step in that direction?
So the first step was I wrote that business plan
Mhm,
with a dream
mhm.
and did not expect to be able to raise the money. And sure enough, the plan was pretty good because we were focusing on assets that were appreciating instead of most used car dealerships. Everything you have in stock is worth less every minute.
Right, of
Like,
course.
it's depreciating,
Yeah.
unless you have some anomaly like COVID kick in and there's a shortage of inventory and, appreciation occurs once in a lifetime.
So that idea, was it kind of the first of its kind in that area? Is that what
Yeah,
got
there
some
there was
attention?
there was there in Madison, Wisconsin,
Mhm.
there were no legitimate, like, world class, 'cause it was like, if I'm gonna write this business plan, I'm gonna write it like best of the best. We're gonna sell investment grade, blue chip, classic and exotic cars to the best of the best collectors in the world. So that's the dream, right? Why not write it as the dream? So sure enough, the professor that I ran it by was like, dude, this is solid because you have to an investor or a bank, you have something that is very low risk because what you're buying is actually worth more every day. Because the used car market, or not used car market, but classic car market, especially in 2007 and very early 2008 was white hot.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, so it was like perfect timing to write the plan and to raise money to do it on the one hand. On the other hand, as you know, in late '08, all hell broke loose with the economy.
Horrendous. Yeah.
Yeah, so to
Was that
answer,
greatly affected? That particular industry?
oh, it was decimated.
Oh, was it really?
Yeah, dude, I went from uh, um, that business plan to, I guess, kind of finish that segment of the story. The professor was like, take it and present it to some banks, get some practice. Who knows? Maybe someone will loan you some money. So being a novice at raising money, I just go to the biggest U.S. bank, Bank of America, the first one. I don't know if those were the specific names, but they were massive banks, right? And I managed to get appointments because of the university I was at. Like,
Right.
here I am. This is my school. This is the
Right.
plan.
Well, the business, I have this plan. I like to come present. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So the first guy took my appointment for the meeting, but almost as soon as I walked in, I could tell he didn't prepare for the meeting until I was walking in.
Hmm.
And he's like, hey man, just before you even sit down, uh, to confirm, you want to borrow money to buy classic cars. And I'm like, yes, sir. He like had a copy of the business plan on his desk. I'm like, yes, sir. That's what's outlined in the plan. And he's like, okay, I'm sorry, brother. We don't touch class cars. We can't. It's a policy.
Hmm.
And I was like, okay, thank you. That was it. I got kicked out of his office for it and sat down. And then I went to the second one and he actually had read the plan. He let me sit down. And he was like, hey man, I'm sorry. We don't touch classic cars. It's just not something we underwrite. But there's this guy at this regional bank. I'm going to give you his information. You need to go pitch this to him. And your odds are actually probably going to be pretty good because this is a badass plan. And I'm like,
Oh, cool.
yeah, I'm like, okay.
That's good. That'll make you feel better.
So I hop up, I'm walking out. He's like, hey, one more thing. I'm like, what's that? He's like, I like to this, like, for many years I've been using Just for Men, right? So, but back then I'm in college, right? I didn't have any gray hair.
Yeah.
He's like, hey, you know anyone who's like business savvy who might be able to go with you that has some gray hair? And I'm like, yeah, my dad. He's like, okay, have your dad go with you. So my dad's not a car guy in the car business, but he's
Right.
passionate about cars. So we
Right.
walk into what's supposed to be a 45-minute pitch meeting, and he is not just an accountant. At the time he was a managing partner at a pretty big accounting firm
Mm.
in Madison,
Oh.
and they knew like some of the same people at the same
Oh,
bank.
nice.
And so what like started out as me with a plan by myself turns into like, hey, I've got this wingman who's happens to be my dad, who's also knowledgeable on cars and is business savvy.
Numbers, especially.
Right.
So
So
it's a big deal.
yeah, it was crazy, man. We walked into what was supposed to be a 45-minute pitch meeting and they just kept calling in members of the loan committee. And sure enough, we walked out with a verbal commitment to a multi-million-dollar loan.
Wow.
Yeah.
On your third one?
Mm-hmm.
How cool is that?
Yeah, it was crazy. It was really crazy. It all moved so fast. And again, I'm still like in one of the most competitive business schools in the world, not just the country, the world. Because like the program that I ended up getting a degree in was the #1 program in the country, commercial real estate development and finance. It's, or land economics basically. And so like, meanwhile, the economy is about to melt down. Why? Because of the mortgage-backed securities market collapse, right? And so I'm learning, I'm like on the front row with some of the brightest minds in the real estate world. Like on the one hand, on the other hand, I'm writing this plan, not knowing that the sky's about to fall, right? So there's all these weird dynamics going on, and the bank does not know what's about to happen.
Right.
March 15th, 2008, we open, and I'm pretty sure on that same day, there was a televised or at least video recorded debate between the presidents of two of the big investment banks, like Bear Stearns and Lehman Brothers, something like that. One was arguing the sky about to fall, and one was arguing that it wasn't. On the day we opened.
Wow.
Yeah, and I think the movie The Big Short even talks to us about that.
That movie is awesome. If you haven't seen that, folks, watch that movie.
And I think
It's awesome.
And I think the movie might have even touched on that meeting. I think, so it was really like, as time has gone by.
That movie really puts a lot out there.
Yeah.
And explains a whole lot of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. So it was.
Yeah.
So here I am trying to open and run a business while in this hyper competitive program. I was, believe it or not, still lost. Like I wasn't just a commercial real estate development major, development and finance, urban land economics, whatever you want to call it. I was also marketing and accounting were also on my, like, I was thinking about being a triple major because I was still lost. I didn't know. They're like the clarity. Yeah, I would love to open up this car dealership, but that's probably not going to happen. My dad told me don't be an accountant, but he also tells me it's the language of business. And if you get a degree in accounting, you'll always have a job.
Yes, for sure.
So
it's shifted into so many crazy cool things for you from there. So the next question that I will ask for someone that may be struggling, Lane, right now, in their head, emotionally trapped in chaos, struggling, what's one thing you would like to share to someone that may have an itch or a passion, but just overwhelmed with distractions? What would you like to say to that person?
Well, man, that's a great question. I often ask the same question on my podcast to my guests,
Yeah.
But I know we've got limited time, but to come full circle to your earlier question about therapy, I started reading. I've read over 400 books that focus on self-help and successful people, and one thing led to another, and I ended up reading these books by Mark Divine, who has become my coach, mentor, even kind of fan. He's been on my podcast. He was my first guest on my podcast.
Yeah.
New York Times bestselling author. He's a former Navy SEAL commander. So what I did is when the times were the worst, like during Great Recession for me, because to kind of bring all that full circle with the business and everything, we opened just in time for the shit to hit the fan. Went from rock star, from in the business world in my mid-20s, being featured in the New York Times.
Yeah. It was a big deal, dude.
Not just New York Times, the cover of the automotive section on a Sunday back when the physical paper was a big deal.
Yeah.
I go from that to losing everything. Lost my house. I got to keep one cool car because there was no equity in it, and I had bought it in my name personally. So lose everything. But during that time, I had a point where I had to try to sell real estate in addition to keep the dealership going. To keeping the dealership going. And turns out that my manager required a meeting every week with every one of his real estate brokers. And I find out that this guy's a former psychiatrist or psychologist who killed it in real estate because he knew how to work with the way people think. And he was so successful that they promoted him to manager. And he didn't tell me before these meetings were required that they were required and why they were required. And it ended up being kind of like therapy sessions. He hands over this stack of burned CDs called Ninja Selling. in one of our
Burn CDs.
yeah. It was like a Ziploc bag with a burned CDs, you know? And I'm like, Jim, what's this? And he's like, listen to those CDs and there's a good chance they'll change your life.
It's called Ninja what?
Ninja Selling.
Ninja Selling.
And they were created by this guy who is phenomenally successful selling real estate in Colorado. And he, he worked very few hours, sold more real estate than pretty much everyone, just killed it. And in those CDs, there were a lot of recommendations, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill and some of these other super early self-help books. And dude, I went through those CDs and then I started going through those books. One thing led to another. As I said, I've been through over 400 of them now. That's when I stopped counting. And Mark Divine, I read his first book. It spoke to me. I read his second book. It spoke to me. After his third book, I reached out to him on LinkedIn. I'm like, Mark, I really appreciate everything you've done with these books. They've helped me. And thank you for your service. I didn't even expect him to respond. He responds. Sure enough, I end up asking him if, after another book, he'll coach me. He says, yes, just so you know, this dude, he'll say yes, but he sends you his little Calendly link, and there's like one appointment in 1.5 months, and it's $1,000 an hour. You know, I was like, I had to think about that decision for like a week or so before I pulled the trigger on $1,000. But to come full circle to your question, as he says in episode 1 of my podcast, when the shit hits the fan, you have to go back to the basics. So like, if your listeners or your viewers are at that point right now, like, you need to clear the decks. You need to start over from scratch.
Yep.
And you have to find clarity. You know, for those of you who are listening and not watching, it's literally on the wall. It's the name of the podcast here. You have to get to that point, right? And it's similar to your story that you've told about your moment of clarity. You have to get all that crap. You think that the drugs, the alcohol, the sex, the gambling, whatever it is helping you get through it, when in actuality, it's just a Band-Aid.
Oh, yeah.
It's a crutch.
And it's a translucent Band-Aid at best. And it's very, very temporary. You have to. I love that advice. That's huge. Cut the fat, trim the fat, get rid of all the excess, and get to your center, and just go, okay, where do we go from here? Nothing matters. I think that's a big thing that people need to realize. Very little that we are sold in this culture as valuable matters. Very little. Very little. It's all just mega distractions. More destructive than pretty much everything combined. I mean, it's so that's a powerful thing, man. Realizing I'm in a whirlwind. Something's got to change. Everything must go. Like an occasional burger and some water.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And one more thing I'll mention is that's super hard.
Super hard.
I mean, and it took me years. Yes, I had this success, and many things went like I said, I'm featured in the New York Times and other newspapers and this and that. But in the background, there was still that lost to some degree portion of my consciousness, my being, And so there were times when my family tried to force me to go to rehab. I sat in jail. I could have been bailed out, and they wouldn't bail me out unless I signed documents to go to rehab. I signed the documents to get out of jail, so they would bail me out of jail.
Did not go.
And then I was gone.
I did.
Yeah. And so anyway, the hindsight being 2020, what would my life have been like if I did go to rehab? On the one hand, on the other hand, it's made me super strong to get to the point when the shit hits the fan. I will sit there and I just don't give up, And so back to your question, it's very hard to just stop the drugs, the alcohol, and everything else when you have nothing else. Because a lot of times when you get to that point, your friends are gone, your family doesn't want to talk to you, you are alone, and you are using those substances or whatever it is as your way of life to just make it through.
To even try to feel like a human.
Yes. So then
or feel something.
yes, exactly. So the final, I guess, cherry on top for my response to your question would be when you're at that point, you have to find a group or a church or a place where you can go that will accept you as you are. I was forced to go to AA meetings when I got my DWI, one of my DWIs.
Yeah.
And I hated it because I was still lost. I refused to believe that I had to, the Serenity Prayers says something like, God, please allow me to accept the things that I cannot change.
Right.
I refused to believe that I was an alcoholic and that I couldn't control my behaviors.
I struggled with the same thing at the very, very beginning. What do you mean I'm powerless?
Yeah.
I'm not going to say that. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
So much ego. The ego is not your amigo. There was one dude that used to, one old school cat in AA, I think he's been sober since 76 or something. That's what he used to always tell me. He'd say, Woodruff, you're too smart for this program. And I'd say, well, thank you, sir. That's not a compliment. Your ego is not your amigo, son. You're going down in flames if you can't get rid of it. He says that all the time. Love that guy. That's the perfect advice. Strip it all away. Back to the basics. Align the internal stuff. Take it to God. I can't do this. Something very powerful about surrender. Just the act of surrender in general, right? Just the act of it, which is kind of funny because the name of your podcast is No Surrender, which is a great play on words, right? Like no surrender from a perspective of don't give up, right? But surrender, control of trying to keep it all together is so powerful, man.
Yeah.
So powerful.
Yeah, man.
It's we can. I would like to have you back on to talk a little bit more because I think one commonality that we have that I didn't even realize, it was a set of CDs that my mother gave me to listen to that put me on the trajectory of personal development. The one she gave me was called Your Wish is Your Command by
Wow.
Kevin Trudeau. He ended up going to prison. I mean, for some like weight loss book or something, but the CDs were amazing.
Wow.
And the set of CDs is what totally changed the trajectory of my life. So I'd love to, next time we meet and talk about this, talk about the stuff we learned in the CDs. I think maybe part 2, that's what we make it about. The stuff we learned after stripping down to the basics and figuring out once there's nothing, then you got to figure out the right things to plug in.
Absolutely.
Because you basically have a blank slate.
Yes. It's like kind of looping back to Mark Divine. It's like you have to, one of his big things, in addition to going back to the basics, is repetitions of doing the right things, developing patterns. Being a Navy SEAL commander and being the honor man in his Buds class, and number 1 in his class, the dude is a beast. And these SEALs, we had another SEAL named Larry Yatch on our show who talks about every single SEAL on this planet has a switch that when it flips, they are a different person. It's like, are they even a person anymore? Because all of a sudden they don't really feel pain.
Right.
All of a sudden they will keep running well beyond their body's limits.
Yeah, those dudes are insane, man. Like that's a whole. I would love. Where does he live?
Larry or Mark?
Divine.
He's in California.
He's in California. I'd
But-
love to talk to that guy.
But yeah, I guess, kind of in closing, like the repetitions are critical. Like you're going to crave that alcohol. You're going to crave those cigarettes. You're going to crave you're going to have the shit hit the fan, and it's going to look so easy to grab that bottle. It's going to look so easy to grab that pill,
Yeah.
but it's the no surrender.
Yeah.
Like you have to like, and exercise is another thing I'll toss in there, last kind of cherry on top of the cherry.
Yeah.
Like
Double cherries.
you don't have anything to do, you don't have a group to go to, just go walk around the freaking block for an hour.
Yeah, get some vitamin D, get some sun. So, what's the name of your business? Tell people how they can get in contact with you because you're in the car business still. You got some cool stuff going on in that. So, what would you like to plug before we sign off?
So there's several. So Fast is the dealership. That's at fast.cars instead of .com. And then if you've got a car to sell, it's don't trade it in.com. Pretty self-explanatory there. And then if you've got a car you need fixed here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, it's accelerateautorepair.com. And we also do collision work. We work with all the big insurance companies, and we'll help you with anything from door ding to a near total loss.
Awesome.
And then if you want to have some fun with, high performance type stuff, we do a little bit of that too, because that's one of my, like,
Go fast, Ricky Bobby.
yeah.
What's a good phone number that people can use if they want to get a hold of the dealership or whatever?
The best number for the dealership, really the main number for everything is 469-300-9669.
969. Awesome. Dude, it's been great having you on, man. I look forward to part 2 so we can dive a little bit more into the meat of what happens whenever clarity changes everything.
Absolutely.
Thanks a lot for tuning in, guys. You guys have a good one. Be blessed. Thanks for listening to today's episode of Clarity Changes Everything. If this conversation helped you in any way, it would mean the world if you would subscribe and then make sure you share it with someone that needs to hear it. And if you're here in the DFW Metroplex and you want to talk windows, all you got to do is text Clarity to 214-225-1922 to schedule your complimentary in-home consultation with me. If you want updates on the podcast, special offers, and more exciting things coming, just want the news, visit claritychangeseverythingpodcast.com and join my email list. Until next time, remember, clarity changes everything.